ready prescriptions that to guide instruction. And a lot of people don't realize that that great resource is right there at your fingertips. And then the fourth thing I'd like to present is helping everybody figure out where the assessment guide for educators is located on the myged.com website. Have found this to be most interesting. We can get a copy of all of the subjects. There are links for each individual subjects, and I highly recommend this for people who are involved in instruction. Please don't hesitate to ask questions as we're going. I will be more than happy. Ooh, got some things in the, oh, Shalene put her contact information there in the chat. So please don't hesitate to ask questions as we go. I'd like this to be as interactive as possible. So, understanding the basic path for accommodations. Again, as I mentioned, Debbie Bergtholt, whom we've all known as the GED manager for Virginia, and then now she's accommodations manager at Pearson VUE. If you click on this link, this takes you to, and I will share this, the page on myged.com. Of course, you can go in and go to the search bar and put accommodations. But this is what the page looks like on myged.com. And when I have a student come to me who wants or needs accommodations, I print off all of these forms for them. As I am not trained as a diagnostician to figure out and know what type of accommodation they're asking for, we print this off and ask them to go to their doctor or back to their high school and get these forms filled out. And that has proven to be successful for my program here in Franklin County. These are easy enough to download. They have to have an account already. Some of you already know this process, but you have to have an account, and then you have to follow the directions found right here. And then you can work through the process. It may take several days. It is even a couple of weeks. It is not a quick process. A lot of our adults don't have the documentation that they need. So you may have to help them identify where they can go. Our WIOA partner DARS is a wonderful resource. I've referred several of my students, and my DARS representative is willing to work with them as long as they're wanting to work. She will get them through the testing. So I'm sure that that's different for everybody. Let me see here. So that's where you can go. Again, if you go up to the website, myged.com, and go into search and put accommodations, that's how you will get to this, or you can use the link I've provided in the slide. There is a team of people that review each case individually, and if all documentation is in place, the process goes forward for approval. The notifications are put on the student's GED profile, and those accommodations are then in place. If it is denied, then more information may be needed. Then there's the appeal process, again, that you saw on the GED page. I've had a client where I applied for accommodations, and one page of documentation was missing. The student receives information that this is needed. We get that, you follow through, and then the process can continue. We find that a lot of our students who are self-identifying are old enough that IEPs and special education was not what it is now, and they don't have that kind of information. Again, we can help serve as a student advocate and help them find those locations and get the support that they need. Again, utilize your WIOA partners. I'd already said about contacting DARS. This is a big one that Debbie shared, effective August 1st, so it's already in place. All accommodation approvals are valid for 2 years. It used to be just for 1. So based on when the approval is in place, it's good for 2 years. I think people find applying for accommodations to be intimidating. I know I did. Until I had done a couple, and I have not done many, getting to know the paperwork and understanding what's needed. So if you've not had to do accommodations, I would suggest you go in and print off the forms and look at what a student would have to fill out and to whom the paperwork needs to go to. Some of it needs to be filled out by the doctor. Some of them can be filled out by a counselor, those kinds of things. Work closely with the high schools. If these people have had IEPs or are newly exited from the high school, then your IEP is there. You have to follow through to see if the testing information is in date. I have one high school in my district. It's the single largest high school west of Richmond, but it is one high school. That makes things a little easier for me, but contacting them if the student is still within the range of the IEP being active can absolutely benefit getting the ball rolling and getting it in place. As our adults only have to self-identify for us to be able to provide accommodations. I have a conversation with my students when they come in, and then the self-identification happens. We have a conversation about getting the accommodation request done for the GED first thing. Because if I'm giving them accommodations that we're able to on the TABE, and then we find out later that they're not going to be able to get them on the GED test, that can create a that can be difficult for the students. So we have that conversation very early. We create a GED account for our students the day that they come in and they register. And if that's something that we need to do, I print the forms off for them that day, and we talk about them and ask them to start whatever piece that they need to do. Again, even if it had an active IEP from our local high school, it still took about 2 weeks. So this is not something that somebody can get, turn around and have to test by Friday. So be aware that it is a process, and Debbie and her team will vet these, and we'll get back in touch with them as soon as they are able. The process is pretty slim now, meaning it's streamlined, not slim. And the people that are involved in it are recognizing that people are wanting to test. So it is a process that they take seriously and get done quickly. Excuse me. But it's important to note that everybody's request is individual, and just because their friend John got the accommodations doesn't mean the current tester, Robert, is going to be able to get the accommodations. So like I said, in that particular session, Debbie spent, probably a full 45 minutes answering questions people had about specific students. And but did get around to telling us that this was something that they needed to do. It is a process. And again, effective August 1st, accommodation approvals are good for 2 years. Has anyone had success getting accommodations in corrections, specifically a local facility? Is it the same process? Megan, I don't have the answer to that. I think it would depend on the facility and what the accommodations are that are needed. That would be a question for Debbie Bergtholt.
Debbie, hi, this is
ma'am.
Stacy. Sue Mansfield is on, and Sue might have some background on that, but an accommodations is an accommodations if it's approved.
Yes, there have been accommodations approved within corrections. But as you said earlier, Debbie, that it's very difficult for our adults to receive accommodations because they lack the documentation that's needed. And that's even more so with the men and women in corrections, but it has been done before.
Okay, thanks, Sue. So that's encouraging. If somebody needs accommodations and we can get the process done and the approval, then accommodations can be provided. Again, that process is dependent on the individual, I'm sure the facility where they are and those things, but the process would be the same for the application process. There's no differentiating based on where somebody is located. Did that answer your question?
Thank you. It does answer my question, but I have
Great.
a follow-up to that, which would
Okay.
be, is the original accommodation have to be within 5 years? The original diagnosis, if they had an IEP with accommodations prior to entering our
Yes.
facility, it has to be within 5 years.
Right. So if you have somebody who, let's say, has an IEP and the IEP is within 5 years, you still have to look at some of the testing because some of that, if I'm remembering correctly, is 3 years. So there are different time frames for that. But again, if you have somebody who is beyond the 5 years or never had the testing, then that would be somebody that you could reach out to DARS, Department of Aging and Rehabilitative Services, to see if they might be able to get the testing done. Our local representative has been able to test 3 people for me, who otherwise would not have been able to get accommodations that they deserved.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, any other questions based on the accommodations from Debbie Bergtholt? Okay. So the importance of intensity and customized instruction delivered to meet the needs of students. This is not something that's new. We've always talked about intensity and duration for our classes, but this was specifically from a session that you see on the screen there, solving the 3 of 4 dilemma, re-engaging students who are 1 test away from earning their diploma. Becky attended this and she said it was a very good session. The data that was shared to us in this session was national. So this is nationwide data. So they looked at the data and found that there were 157,000 students who have 1 test left. Just 1. 80% of those are lacking math. This number kind of surprised me as how high it is, although I was not surprised that math is the highest test that is needed. Out of my students, all of my students need math, but 2, and those 2 need RLA. So you all may have similar experiences that a lot of your 1-to-go testers are math students. They're the hardest ones to get back in. They're the hardest ones to work. They need the coaching, the cheerleading, all of those kid gloves and encouragement that we can give them. Out of that 157, that would be 125,000 students who need just math nationwide. I work better with numbers than just with percentages. Of that 125 who need math, only 33% of those had reached out to an adult education program or center. That's 41,000 plus that had selected out of 125,000. So there are a lot of people out there who only need math, who haven't gotten in touch with, looked for, or found services in an adult education center. So that's a lot of people that we could be potentially helping. We find when we can target the math instruction that we provide to exactly what our students are needing. And the way we know that is, again, by the prescriptions from TABE Online, which is what we use, and our GED Ready prescriptions. And that's what we use to drive instruction. We also want to be able to encourage those individuals who may still be need that math, but you haven't seen in 3 or 4 years. We continue to reach out to our students somehow, some way. We stalk them on Facebook, whatever we need to do to encourage them to come back and take that test. We can help them. We can get them there. Most of them have, in my experience, most of them have some kind of traumatic experience with math. I know I did. Very insecure, have no self-esteem when it comes to math. Math just intimidates them by being a four-letter word. So we need to be able to help them get around that. I heard a comedian recently talk about how he was trying to help his daughter with math, and he wanted to know when did they put letters with it. You know, you start changing things up and it's something the parent never had or was not successful with, then the cycle tends to repeat itself. So we want to be able to disarm math from being the bomb that stops them from going forward. This is not something that's new to any of us that have been in adult ed. We know that they come in and the first thing they tell you is, I can't do math. I don't like math. Math doesn't like me. Been there, done that, said that myself until I was able to get to the point where I was comfortable with it. So a lot of our math instruction is not just math skills and applied math skills, but it's also helping them with their self-efficacy. Come on, I know you can do that, and celebrating the small, they got that problem right. Woo, that's time for a big cheer because they finally got it right. I know when I started this 26 years ago, and I've worked with Stacy for those 26 years, we have to use realia. We have to use real time. We have to use life, standards-based instruction. But our adults do need and thrive on that pat on the back, that star, if they've done some homework. I had students one time and I put a star on the paper just because it was exciting. And the student looked at me and he said, "Where's my sticker?" So I went out and bought stickers because this is something that was important to him to celebrate his accomplishment. So we want to meet them where they are. And get them where they need to be, but understand that there's a lot more than just math going on.
Debbie, Mary
yes,
put in the chat that you need to be more of a math counselor instead of a math teacher.
Well, when I was in college, when I went through high school and got into college the first time, math was not me. I was not math, didn't do math, didn't want to do math. And I ended up going to school and had a teacher that connected with me, because remember, we have to meet the students where they are. And afterwards, he told me, he said I needed to be a math teacher. And I asked him to call my dad on the phone because my dad wasn't going to believe that if I told him. So he called and said, "Debbie needs to be a math teacher." We laughed about that for years. But if you can meet that student and give them options, because they may not connect with my style of teaching, but maybe there's somebody else that can help them, or somebody else, some other option like online that can get them to cross that bridge, then we do everything we can. And that's all part of being adult educators, is meeting them where they are and trying to get them to cross that bridge to the success. Okay, Alvin said, when they do return and math is their hold ground, you have to make the math personal. This has worked for me. Absolutely. You have got to put them in the picture. They have to understand that what they're doing is meaningful. I laugh now when students come in and say, "I don't know why we have to learn algebra. I've not done algebra since high school. I don't need it. Why do I have to know it?" And even though I can't see a lot of pictures, I can see Alvin, we're nodding our heads because we all hear that. But when you have a student who comes in and stops at the local Hardee's every morning to come into class, and he brings his biscuit and his coffee, and he says, I don't know why we have to do this. And I said, "I'm going to prove to you that you're doing algebra in your head." "Yes, Alvin, I see you." And he's like, "No, I don't do algebra." So we talk about when he went through the line, "Did you have exact change?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Then how did you pay for it?" He said, "I had a $10 bill." I said, "Did you know what your change was going to be?" He says, "Yes, I count my pennies." I said, "Dude, you're doing math in your head. You're doing algebra. in your head. And once he started to see that he was doing that, then he came around. He never did want to admit that he was doing algebra, but he was at least less confrontational about it. When you can show them that they are doing this, it's not just something somebody designed to spend an hour and a half in a block class in high school for you to go out and get a job. That's not what we're doing. So that's why the realia and the standard-based instruction is so important, because then you can help the students see the reality of it and that what they're doing is something that they're going to use. Let's see it, chat. Oh, Mary says Salt and Light GED math crash course is helpful. Oh, Mary, can you speak to that for just a second?
Sure. I love math. But I was a special ed math teacher. And I came here to do GED about 5 years ago, and I'm coming from the Virginia SOL, where there's lots of practice questions. And that's kind of what I mean, I could teach algebra and everything, but I found this website called the GED Math Crash Course.
Mhm.
And she has everything you need to pass the GED. She has a method. She has videos. She has all the work. Everything is organized, and you can watch her videos. I found them helpful, even though I had, taught many years, algebra and geometry and algebra 2. But she talks about, the GED. It's all geared to the GED, and she's got, I don't know, I just click with her. She's like my friend. I don't even know her. But I would watch her videos before I would, teach something, to get ideas from how she presents it. And I'm like, wow, that's so true. My whole life, I've been adding things that are alike, like not, just kind of when she points it out, like when you point that out, it's just some of the ways she, phrases things. I think it's great, and it works. It's very helpful and I will also plug calculator for the math test. If you don't know how to use the stow button or the table button, or because I found one book finally with the stow button, but the stow button, the table button, the data button, the probability button, and teach them how to recognize what those questions look like in the vocabulary. That can make the difference when someone passing or somebody getting a college ready score. And it saves time, and it gives them a brain break, because some of those questions are really long. But anyways, if you want any of my stuff on the calculator buttons, they are magic.
Mary, and this is a free resource?
Yes, it's free.
Okay.
She puts everything there for free. She does ask you to support her by buying coffee. And she has added like a workbook that you can buy that it has it all bound together. But it's step 1 is watch her lesson. Step 2 is do the practice. And there's 3 levels, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And she says, just pick your level and do that level of practice. When I would do it in a class, I'd bring all 3 levels. Because some students would want all 3 levels, but you don't even need the advanced. And she has like a unit 0, 1, 2, and 3. I think that gets you through geometry. But she says, do like a unit, take a ready. If you get a 150 or higher, try the test. If you don't pass the test, do the next unit. And so she has a little blurb there about how to use her website. But I find that, we get through most of that, and then do a little bit of, probability and geometry, not every single lesson, because you don't have time to do all of them, but it really, and it builds their confidence, and they finally have success. And also highly recommend talking about the creator of algebra, forget his name, but I have a little PowerPoint that my daughter made. And, it talks about that it was created for shopkeepers and splitting up land. So for like everyday, people, and it was the basis of we wouldn't be able to, they were able to develop algorithms that allow us to use cell phones and fly on planes. So if you ask people, if they hate algebra, do you like your phone? Do you like to take a trip, or those kind of things? That background is also kind of interesting, especially for adults.
That's awesome. Somebody asked, what is her name? I'm sure that refers to the Salton.
Her name is Kate Redmond. I believe it's with a
Kate.
K. I'm pretty sure that's it. And she also has a YouTube channel with some great science videos that I used as well, reviewing, you know, like the GED loves to ask this. And she's worked, I think it's over 10 years with students struggling students and helping them pass the GED. So I love her stuff.
Mary, would you be willing to put your contact email in the chat?
Sure.
And Jeffrey put the website for Light and Salt Learning on there. Thank you, Jeffrey. Pam, you said you've joined a Facebook group for passing the GED. Do you like to speak about that?
Yes, that is correct. I would have to look the name up. And I can't pick Facebook up in my office.
Okay.
But yes, there are several groups on Facebook, and I have joined one of them, and the students always give their success stories to one another about what helped them pass particular subjects that they were struggling with. So it's very helpful, and it's very motivating to the students, you know, who are trying to pass all aspects of the GED test.
Okay. That's wonderful. I don't know why I hadn't thought about Facebook pages. We use Facebook for everything in our program, but that thought had just escaped my mind. So thank you, Pam. I appreciate you sharing. Let's see. Krista says she's been working with Kate and proofing her workbooks. It's a great resource. Well, I appreciate everybody sharing, because that's one of the things that's nice about doing these kind of things is the networking, and I use this and this works for me, and well, we tried that and it didn't work. I mean, we've got a lot of people that we want to reach and help, and always having one more resource to try is always good when we're working with students, especially those that are struggling. So thank you for sharing your information. And back to this about providing focused instruction. We know this. This isn't something new. This isn't something we haven't heard about. So one of the things that was discussed in that presentation was having workshops, varying lengths, to provide the intensity and the focus. I know our program provides a boot camp of the sort to come in, and we work through the formulas on the formula page so that students are familiar with what the formulas are and how to use them and when to use them. And that helps a lot, because a lot of them, even though we tell them that there's a formula page available, forget. They're so nervous about taking the test and they're chugging through the problems that they forget that that's there, or they're not as familiar with it as they should be. Part of the math that we'll get to in a second for a presentation that I attended was on math, and using the resources like the prescriptions and things that are available to you to help the students get over that hump to get that test done. Was the formula page, and making sure students are familiar with all of them that are on there. So our workshop / boot camp is come in and we spend 2-3 class periods working specifically on the formulas, because a lot of times it's the formula page that my students at least have had an issue with. So the presentation said that boot camps have proven quite effective and are certainly a strategy that can be used. We've done Super Saturdays at our location and invited anybody that wanted to come in, and today we're going to do math, and we go in there and we hit the highlights. We hit the points that we know are missed more often than not. If we know the student's coming and we can look at their prescriptions, we make a point of hitting those pieces as we go. And then we try to get them to take a GED ready test when they're finished to see if what we discussed that day helps. Sometimes they obtain the passing score on the GED ready and we get them to come in and take the official. And sometimes they don't, but we've been able to eliminate some of those skills that they were struggling with they were able to get that day. So it's just a little bit less that they have to work on to get to the passing score. The students tend to like coming in and working like that for several hours and then taking the GED ready. They like getting the score that day so that they can see how they're doing. We tend to spend quite a bit of time going over the GED ready prescriptions with our students and talking to them about, well, here's where you're proficient. Here's some things that you need to work on. This is what this is telling us. We compare one that they took before to one that they're taking now to see if there are any areas that they're still not working on, so we can focus in even more. We really want the students to understand that these are the things that the system is telling you need to work on. And it isn't just go in and the prescription on the GED ready tends to be kind of generalized, work on whole numbers. But we know that this student is having a problem converting fractions and decimals, or finding that old question of 25 is what percent of 150, and being able to know how to do that. And I'll speak to that here in a little while. Anybody else have any questions or have any notes about having boot camps? Is that something that you've tried, or workshops, and have had some success with that? If you do, please share.
We had several last year and they were helpful. We tried to reach out to our region to get, those one to go, which we did make some connections, but we also opened it up to the students in our program, and it would happen on a Thursday night, a Friday night, and then a Saturday morning. So, and I found if the students could come to either Thursday or Friday and then come to the Thursday and Friday were like 5:30 to 8. And Saturday was like 8:30 to 2 o'clock with the option of taking a ready around 1 o'clock. Some were too brain dead to take that ready, but they took the voucher with them to do it later. And some of them wanted to do it right then and there. And we had our lab open so they could get that setting. But that really, I think it's super helpful. And I started using them because I was, last year they had that. I went to a meeting on, boot camps, and I started with, Score Boost, the first one, but then I started there's Review for Salt and Light Learning. So, and she provides all the answers. And so I would use her materials because I still had the other, it's information overload, but I liked her materials. She has, for example, and talked about test taking strategies, certain questions how to use the flag button, to guess on certain questions and save them till the end because of the time factor. And she has a really good no calculator part. Her thing is we're not going to be able to teach them all of those fractions and all those basic skills that they don't have. So I say never fear a fraction with the fraction button, and you only have to do those 5 to 7 questions. And I just say, learn these in her packet and see if those are common ones. And if the others aren't there, do your best, guess on those, because you can miss them all and still pass the test. So just kind of those kind of things about how to, actually take the test as well, not going number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. But yeah, I think they're helpful. I'd like to get more of the one to go people to get in here.
Thank you. Alvin, you had your hand up?
Yes, I did. We had a boot camp this summer. That was my first one because I'm new to the program. I'm not new to math, but I'm new to adult ed. And of course, even though learning is learning, I have come to also know that it's another edge to adult learning as well. In my first boot camp, I did draw up, because I'm a former SOL writer and a former SOL strategist as well. I used those skills in setting up the STEM 1 and STEM 2 to help students understand that STEM 2 helped you to get to STEM 1, and then working with and having that opportunity in boot camp to use some of those strategies was great. the workshop that's going on now is giving me extra tools for my toolbox. Like what the thing that Mary had just mentioned, because that is a great opportunity using the boot camp to hit with some strategies and with some things that you have discovered that is, and I like the point that was made, not just randomly doing something. And we are constantly told when we come in to make sure that we look at, target what the student need, not what you think they need, but what the testing results has revealed, and then come up with strategies to make that happen. And once again, the boot camp, I'm hoping, I know we're probably going to do another one, but I think I'll be more prepared with a lot of particular objectives, especially even after today as well, that will address even further the things that we already are doing with the things that we need to do. So that has been helpful for me, and I constantly use those strategies in the classroom, but making it personal has been one of the stronger strategies that I used then and using now as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Alvin. I appreciate you sharing. We also have invited people by putting out advertisements and sharing with, on our Facebook page, and partners that'll share with us, just a general, hey, have you ever thought about the GED? Come on in on this day and take, we can pay for them to take a GED ready, because sometimes they don't know where they are and what they need to work with, and that's why they don't come in. So we have offered that test, and come in and take it, and let's talk about what your opportunities are and what your options may be. And that has sometimes pulled some people in that we may not have gotten otherwise. So that's something else people can think about when looking to bring in people, is using that advertisement and then asking that question. Have you ever thought? Great, well, come in, let's do this, and let's see where you are. Because we all have those students that come in and say, no, I don't want to study, I don't want to do anything, I just want to take the test. Okay, if that's what you want to do, but we could do that with the practice test, and then that way we can get them. So that's how I attack that. When somebody comes in and says, I just want to take the test, I tell them, absolutely, I can help you register for that and then get your results. Or you could come through our program, we can have a practice test. You could take that and see where you are and if you're ready, so that you're, spending your money wisely. So we certainly want to keep that in mind. So let's move on to our objective 3. This was the workshop that I attended. And this is how to use your assessment principles and prescriptions, and how you're working with people. And this was a presentation called Mathematic Reasoning, Targeting Instruction Through Assessment Principles. And this was with Mr. Michael Bell, who was the mathematics specialist from Pearson VUE, providing this presentation. And he's an interesting man and was very entertaining. Again, here are the statistics that were being shared all throughout the GED conference were students that had not passed a test. You can see them there, that science and social studies are lower categories at 3% and 5%. 12% are RLA, and 80%, there's that figure again, 80% of students not passing a test or needing a test is at 80%. Utilize the test prescriptions. This is something that I tell my teachers. We test the students, we get the test prescriptions, and we pass those on. I know back in the day, people were just looking at it as a 3-digit score. You're not going to improve that 3-digit score to get the gains we all need and want our students to make if we're not targeting, as we were talking about just a minute ago, the instruction. How do we do that? Utilize your NRS assessment, TABE or CASAS, whatever it is that you're using, and the prescriptions that come out from that, and then the GED prescriptions. The nice thing about those GED ready prescriptions, as you all know, is that you can tag them to specifically fit the resource, be it a website, be it a book, those types of things, and you can target it specifically to what you're doing. It was very interesting to be at this conference and in this particular session and have people not realize that you can target the GED ready, the prescription, to the resource you're using, no matter which book, which provider, it's all in there. We even have it in Spanish. So you can target for that student. and come up and help with instruction, but also give them things to study on and know where to look for if they're studying at home. An interesting piece of information that Mr. Bell shared with us, that each question on all of the official tests are only worth 1 point. And this caused everybody in the room to raise their hand because we've been told for years that the questions are weighted. So this one may be worth 1 point. This one may be worth 2 or 3 points. I heard this in 3 of the 4 sessions that I attended, that no, each question is only worth 1 point. So we spent probably a good 10 minutes discussing this in the presentation, and him reassuring us that that is the case. The questions are not weighted. So no matter how complicated or the level of difficulty, only 1 skill is being tested per question. Okay. However, your student may have to know several skills to get to be able to answer the skill that's being tested. Does that make sense? If you have somebody who needs to find the average and the answer then is asking for another question, they may not be testing the finding the average, but how you use that answer in the rest of the question. These 4 points here were caused a pretty active conversation, again, because we have been told for years that the questions were weighted and some questions were more than others. And he said it was across the board. The person I saw in a science presentation said the same thing. The questions are worth 1 point. So then the question was asked, if there's only 1 question, 1 point per question, how do they get a 145? And so the discussion went into raw score and scale score, and the scale score is normed. So that's why, you know, if there's only 30 questions, how do you come up with 145? So just understand that there is a difference between the raw score and the scale score. But again, I stress each question is only worth 1 point. Got some in the chat. Okay, Megan, what, the questions are not weighted? That is big news. Let me tell you, it turned our the session we were in into an absolute zoo. Everybody was talking to the person next to him and raising hands and questions. And so finally, when he got us to calm down and quiet down, he said, yes, and that is the way it has always been, he said, which was quite a surprise, because I remember being in Pearson VUE hosted sessions and being told that the questions were weighted. So as of July, he explained to us that no, the questions are just one point and are not weighted. So let me see here. So a click and drag question where you're moving multiple items, you can't get partial credit. I don't know the answer to that. All I know is that the question is worth 1 point. So if you're clicking and dragging, I'm not sure how much. That would be a question for him and was not a question that was asked. So I'm sorry, Marika, I can't answer that because the student has not mastered all the skills required to answer a question. Then the question, then all skills are assessed. In theory, yes, because you have to do A and B in order to get C, which is what is being, which is the test item. However, with the points only being, with the answers only being worth 1 point, if the student can't get to C, or they have to do this skill and this skill to get to this one, then yes, you could pull that out, but they're not going to differentiate that in any kind of prescription, because the prescriptions we get are very general. So that would take some digging for you to get to. I have an example coming up here, hopefully that will help explain that. Alvin did not have that in, but I do understand the process. Okay, good. Megan, I feel lied to. Good to know. Thank you for Yeah, you should have been in the room with us when he shared that. Like I said, it completely and totally disrupted the whole process. And people were upset. People were a little angry, and confused. And yeah, and so they were like, why? Why are you telling us this now when before we were told? Well, the individual himself was not, he says, I've never shared that information. It can't speak to who did. He says, however, I can tell you now. So, and like I said, that I think was one of the single most important things that I got out of all of the sessions that I attended, was that was mentioned in almost all of them, was that it's worth 1 point. So, okay. Math reasoning. Thank you, Stacy. So let me see. Oh, I've gone backwards. Okay. One of the ways that Michael Bell told us that we can help students get that scaffolding that somebody was asking about, if they can't answer A, if they can't do A and B, they can't get to C, is using the assessment guide for educators. Can I get you all to do a show of hands to tell me how many of you are familiar with the assessment guide? Some kind of note on your hand up, or smiley face or something. Okay. All right. So hopefully we'll be sharing some information with you. Thank you. So let me show you a multiple skill question. Something that helped me in doing math was when you get that problem that has, what the example I gave before was, what is 25% of 100? Okay, so I have to make the math easy for me. You have to know how to do the percent circle or other resources. I learned the algebra equation of is over of equals 100% over 100. So once I had somebody show this to me, translating percents into numbers and numbers into percents all of a sudden became very, very easy. It opened doors for me, and I know it has opened doors and helped students sit back and go, wow, this makes it so much easier. So this is how we set up, and this is how I teach students. There obviously are multiple ways to do that. So an example here is 68 is what percent of 85? You cross multiply and then divide by what's opposite of X, and you get 80. And the thing I tell my students, and my dad used to tell me, is there is no reason for you to get an answer to an algebra question wrong, because you can plug in what you did, solve for it, and if you see here with the green check, you get 68 equals 68, you know your answer is correct. If it's not equal, there's an issue. We need to go back in and try it again. So one of the things I find with my math students is I think they're all trying to save trees, because none of them want to use paper to do any of their math problems. They want to do them in their head. And while I appreciate them wanting to do that, I tell them the easier thing for them to do is do it on paper, because if you're doing it in your head and you make a mistake, I can't go back and see where the mistake was. If you write it down, we can go back and find the mistake. And I will provide you with all the paper you could possibly use. So don't worry about it. Don't write it in tiny little letters trying to fit it into 2 lines. Come on, let's use the paper and write out the steps. You can't, your consistency is, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Your consistency is encouraged if you're writing it down, because then you get in the habit. If you get in the habit of skipping steps because you're doing them in your head, that's where your mistakes are made. So in this case, what kind of skills, multiple skills, do you think that being used in this problem? Anybody want to take a guess? Put it in the chat. I got, ooh, you guys are putting chat. Okay. I like them to use blank paper. Okay, good. Write it out. We've all been fighting that since the beginning of time. Yes, Jeffrey, we have. When you learn to read, the print is big. Unfortunately, when students learn algebra, they read small print. Absolutely. My son wanted to write and solve all 10 of his algebra problems in the top 10 lines on his piece of paper. And I had to just keep at him. No, you need to write it out big so that you can see what you're doing. And with our students, we don't use the college ruled. We use the wide ruled because it gives them just a little bit more room. And with some of our lower students, we use big graph paper so that they can get the alignment of the numbers when they're doing it by hand. Any of those things that we can do to help our students find success and be able to move forward from them. Okay, Eileen said algebra one-step equation with a variable, yes. And Jeffrey says, by the way, I used to learn so much by looking at student scrap paper. Absolutely. Equality. Okay, so that's two that I didn't get on here. So here's what I came up with just quickly. They have to know multiplication. They have to know division. They have to know percent as part of 100. It's algebra reasoning with checking. So there are multiple steps in there. The answer of 80% may not be the skill that they're looking for. This may be a problem where they're looking at multiplication. So and his when somebody asked, how do we know what the skill is that they're looking for, his response to us was, I can't tell you. So there was only so much that he was able to share, but this was one of those that it is a multiple step question, and you need to be able to help them get through each of the steps. All right, so let's take a look with about, I want to do this and then leave room for any questions or comments anybody has. The assessment guide for educators. For those of you that are not familiar with it, if you go to myged.com and click in the search bar and put assessment guide for educators, this is what you'll get. It's all kinds of resources. And they have down here at the bottom, the assessment guide for educators of all subjects. So that covers all of them. But then it breaks it down into, here's a social studies, there's an RLA, math, science. There's an introduction. I would suggest that you go in and look through them. It can help you with, the way Michael Bell explained it is it gives you the generality, then it gives you the things that fall under that generality that they need to know. He says if your staff instructionally are ready and familiar with this and can get your students to understand this, they should have no problem passing the test. And that's from Michael Bell himself. So I had not heard of this before I went, or if I had, I didn't remember. So I came in here, and math being the thing that I tend to focus on the most, I clicked on math and pulled it up, and I just started at the beginning and just read through it for my own information to see then what it was saying. But he strongly encouraged using this resource from the myged.com website and using it in your instructional practices. So if you're using these and the students know this information, he said that they should pass the test. So again, there's another page for this. Oh, that's GD Price, and yeah. So the main page is what you pull up when you get assessment guide for educators. And you just click on this and pull up the link. Obviously, the one down here at the bottom that says educators for all subjects incorporates and encompasses all of these other individual subjects. But if you are looking for something specific to a subject, then click on the link and see what you can get out of that. I highly recommend that you look through that. He pushed it. He pushed it all the way through our presentation. His response to several questions was, you'll be able to get that answer when you look at the resource at the end of the presentation. So that's what the assessment guide for educators. So let's look here for educators for science, just to give you an exposure to it. You come in and it talks about assessment targets, types and layouts. We all know what the layouts are: click and drag, drag and drop, hotspot, short answer, multiple choice. This gives you a little bit more information on what they're looking for. item layouts, development of cycle of short answer, how to answer the question, what they're looking for. Then this section here, and this is in each of the resources per subject. It talks about performance level 1, performance level 2, performance level 3, and performance level 4. So it tells you what you need to get this level, but you need to also know this to get to the next level. So let me scroll down to page 26. Give me just a second to find it for you. Page 24, 26. Okay, so here is level 1 below passing. They're developing proficiency. They need help with specific textual evidence, identify and refine hypotheses, understand and explain non-textual sets. So all of these things are what they have to do. But if they want to go to the high school equivalency level, they need to do this here, and then this gets them to the next level. So that's also helpful if you're wanting to work with somebody not only to pass, but maybe you're trying to get somebody to get college credit. Well, you need to know this to pass, but you need to know this, this, and this. So again, this is something that is helpful, but it is something that I would recommend you take time, that since we have gobs of time, don't you know, to sit through and look through and read it so that you can understand it, because everybody's going to utilize this resource differently. But I found it most helpful just to read through it. I've been in adult ed for 26 years, and some of this stuff was new to me, because it was shown in a way that worked for me. So I hope that this is a resource that you can use. And again, I will go back. This is the link, if you want to write it down, that takes you directly to the assessment guide for educators. But again, all you have to do is go to the myged.com website and put in the search bar assessment guide for educators, and it'll pull the page up as well. Does anybody have any questions for me? I want to leave some time here in case somebody has a comment or any questions. Everybody's quiet.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Were there any specific changes mentioned about the social studies test?
Changes as
The type of questions that were being asked, the content that they were being tested on? It seems to me like it's changed over the years.
I don't know specifically because the social studies session ran concurrent with the math, so I chose to do the math.
Okay.
I do know that Michael Bell said that there are always questions on an official test that are being tested. They don't count towards the score of the student, so it may be a new something along the lines of what you're talking about, and they put them through the system so that students test them, but the questions don't impact the tester's score. So they're being, the questions are being tested. Does that make sense?
Yes, but eventually they might make it onto the test.
Exactly. And that's why having it electronic now means we don't have to go through and change from test ABE, AC, then to BA, BC, and you have to collect everything up and do all that like we have to do with the print. They are constantly putting in new questions and testing them to test their validity with the test. And then if they pass the test, then those test questions are slid into the test, and the test is updated without interrupting access to the test or making sure that you're given the right version of the test. It's the explanation is that the updating is done automatically.
Thank you. I'm interested also to know, with that big news about the math test not being weighted, how they will explain the RLA extended response grading as well. Was that discussed in anything that you were at?
No, again, the specific subjects were running concurrently, which was a little frustrating, and not having another one that was available at a time that I could go to. I'm not quite sure how we would find out the answer to that. There is a contact option on the myged.com that you might reach out to see. But really, in that case, that question is not something that was asked in any of the workshops where I attended.
Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate all you shared here. It was very
Now,
helpful.
sorry, I couldn't answer your question, Megan.
No, that's okay.
Thanks for asking.
Mhm.
It looked, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Hey, we've got just a couple of minutes here. This may be completely trivial, but I've got some insight into the weighted versus non-weighted and points and all that stuff. So from my experience and from what I understood about the GED test, within a single version of the test, all the questions had the same value, whether it was the most challenging question on the test or the easiest question on the test. They all have the same value. And one of the things that does, it means that if somebody's scoring a 144 or below, they're missing more than half the questions on the test. And they're not just missing the hard questions, they're also missing some of the things that we'd consider to be easier. Now, let me change gears here a little bit. One of the things about the weightedness is that a particular raw score does not equal the same scale score on every single test.
Right.
And so what ends up happening is it's really weighted across tests, as in one test may only have one quadratic equation, and that test is considered a little bit easier. And so it requires a higher raw score to get that passing scale score. On another test, they might have two quadratic equations, or they might look at it and see that the questions tend towards higher level math. And with those, you require a lower raw score to get that passing scale score. And I think that's what they were talking about when they said that there was some weighting to it.
Well, I appreciate your insight as always, Jeffrey. I just was sharing what Mr. Bell had shared with us in that meeting, because he did have to go in and explain the difference between a raw score and a scale score. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I had one short comment about the math boot camps, which I learned after the first one. But if you do get people that aren't in your program, you do have to do the CASAS testing and plan that. And for their score to show up in your data, they have to be there at least 12 hours. So we have, depending on when they take the CASAS test, most of them take it part of it and how many days they come. We would issue licenses to that Aztec GED Flash in order for them to do some extra practice to get to that 12 hours. So just kind of like data stuff,
Yep.
Right?
Always got to pay attention to that. So, all right. Well, I really appreciate everybody coming in, and the questions were wonderful and the input was so helpful. I've been scribbling notes as everybody else has been talking, so I certainly appreciate it. Anybody else have any other questions? Because we're about 3 minutes to being done. Yeah. All right. Well, I've put my contact information. Becky and I split our responsibility. She wrote an article for the was it Progress newsletter, and I did the presentation. So we kind of double teamed it together and handled where our comfort zones are. So please feel free to reach out to either one of us if you have any more questions, and we will be more than happy to share it. And I was very grateful that we got to attend the National GED Conference.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Debbie, and thank you all the attendees for the good questions and the good comments. Have a great rest of the day and enjoy your VAACE conference for the rest of the day and the rest of the week. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Debbie. Hey,
Bye.
Stacy. Good to
Thank
see
you.
you guys.
Hey, Jeffrey.